from the bathroom tap that is the same as the one from the kitchen tap. Hi, that's the story for another video. Sup hoodlums. The food we are eating today is jiggling. It's jiggling at me. I don't like it. I don't like it one bit. I don't even want to look at it. I don't look at it. Okay. Hi, hello, welcome. Remember when we ate olives? I haven't eaten olives since. It destroyed it for me. I don't think I have ever eaten jello, so it's gonna be interesting. It's gonna be yet another video of me like for half an hour trying to not look at jello and being disgusting at it. And if you're wondering what was my childhood, I don't know. It was sweets that didn't move, they didn't jello out themselves, they didn't like jiggle. Okay, I don't like my food jiggles, it's not supposed to be a worm. Hi, hello and welcome. This is Last Meals. Did you miss me? Last week, just about, as I was about to record, I had like food poisoning, a stomach virus, something happened to me, I don't know what. I just landed in bed and I was like, okay, so I'm not eating jello today. Let's keep this jello for another week. And here we are. This is Last Meals if you're new. I come to the point eventually. Me, homegirl, with like no actual skills, I sit down on my fat ass and I eat somebody else's last meal, and that somebody has done some bad deeds. They have ended up in prison. They're usually on a death row. Sometimes they cheat, like today. Because no sane person would ever ask for jello as their last meal. No, prove me wrong. I didn't really check up on Wikipedia on that. But let's say that's correct, because this person ended up dying of natural causes, bitchiness, cancer, all of that good stuff that she probably has deserved. So she could only technically stomach jello in a prison hospital. We are talking about Marjorie Diehl-Armstrong. It's still present. Still present. This is gonna be an interesting video. So, Marjorie Diehl-Armstrong, who you probably better know if you watch the Netflix Evil Genius. Yeah, that's Marj. Interesting life, let's say. Very morbid and interesting, so let's dive straight into it. Why did I buy a hoodie that can be a dress? Choices that matter. The person we are talking about today, speaking of, made some bad choices. They were on like a super right path. So, Marjorie Diehl-Armstrong was born. I will eventually get to it. I'm gonna brace myself. Okay, I'm gonna wait until she's in the hospital. And then I'll deal with it. I cannot bring myself to start with this. So, Marjorie Armstrong, she was born February 26, 1949. We don't know much about her childhood except that she excelled at school to the point that she was announced a valedictorian. So she was super smart all throughout school. What I find super interesting is that she majored in sociology and social work. And she really wanted to work and inspire young people. But then there was always something that prevented her from doing that, and that was her mental health. She has been diagnosed with a wide array of diseases, so everything from bipolar, schizophrenia, manias, to like personality disorder and narcissism. And she has received therapy from a very young age to deal with this. So you're like, okay, cool, what could go wrong? She's working on herself. Again, this is one of those rare ones where you're like, nobody abused you, kiddo. What are you doing? So her mom dies in year 2000. And this obviously was a trigger. It's just how Marjorie described her mom that I find super strange. She said, my mother was a very clean living woman. I love my mother. I have had differences with her, but she was all I had. Which I'm like, why are you describing your mom as a clean living woman? Like, certainly there's more adjectives to it. Like, you're a valedictorian, which means she was a clean living woman. Like, that's not a compliment. If I was to die and somebody was like, she was a clean living woman, I was like, first of all, I'm not. But second of all, wait, some compliments, please, hello? So you could say that was a trigger. Further triggers the line when Marjorie actually got married. Let's just say no man that Marjorie ever loved or that ever loved Marjorie stayed alive for long enough to tell the tale and to actually share their story. So her first husband, this guy called Robert Thomas, and well, what was wrong with that marriage? They just constantly argued, and they would resolve it by taking recreational drugs, and then everything was fine for the period of time. Then they would continue arguing. Then obviously, if they were out of drugs or if they were too high on drugs, then the arguments would turn violent. Well, according to Marjorie, which Let's just say after a certain time, I'm not sure I believe anything that comes out of Marjorie's mouth, but again, for the sake of the story, according to Marjorie, he would beat her repeatedly until one evening she was done with it. She took a gun and shot him 6 times. Now when the police looked into this place, what they have discovered is that both of them, but more Marjorie, were hoarders. Like TLC level. There's magazines, there's newspapers, there's like food that has expired. The place was gross. So somehow in their head they managed to acquit Marjorie. She was not even charged for this murder. They were like, ah, she's just a pet hoarder. I have no idea how. There's no facts about this trial. I have no idea how. But yeah, she just never was charged for this murder. And actually the same year of the acquittal, she married and buried her second husband, Richard Armstrong. Hence the Diehl-Armstrong in her name. Even less is known about this, so people have just known that he has suffered a fall after this marriage. Due to this fall, Richard has suffered a severe head hemorrhage and has died because of it. And still, no foul play was investigated, and Marjorie just moved on with her life. Well, yeah, she just tragically buried 2 husbands. If you don't know this story, now you're thinking, this is going into some Black Widow territory. And that's where I was like, oh, I knew this story. So I was like, this is strange, but also should definitely be red flags to the police to immediately imprison her, because she's just gonna keep killing. Well, they don't. Now we're gonna talk about a second person that is heavily involved in Marjorie's story. Well, let's say in her demise, and that's Brian Wells. So if you know this story, you know where this is gonna go, but I just want to give you the idea of who Brian Wells was and how these 2 stories were linked because of the crime we're gonna talk about later. So Brian was born in Warren, Pennsylvania to Harold and Rose Wells. And he was kind of the opposite of Marjorie in that way that he wasn't really into school. He just didn't like it. He only spent like 39 days in his sophomore year, and that's when he dropped out of high school and he started working here and there as mechanic, but he spent most of his life delivering pizzas. And one main difference between these 2 people is that Brian had integrity. Like everybody would describe him as proud. Like his landlady said that no, he was always proud to make the rent on time, and he would never accept help from others. Like he was proud to be able to provide for himself, despite of dropping out of school, despite of working hard for himself, and like getting all these odd jobs, and he would not accept even food from them, like not even a cookie. He was super proud of who he was. And Brian spent like his day to day, well, working, but then he was like really friendly with the neighbors. We discussed Survivor and plots, like different TV shows. And every single person in this story tells that there's no way that Brian was complicit in the crime we're going to talk about next. They basically say that he is gullible, is easily convinced into different things. However, there's nothing to say that he would mastermind something like this or would willingly commit something like this. He was just well-rounded, very proud of who he was and what his life has been so far. So nobody predicted this. Now, what is it that nobody predicted? We are coming to the D-Day. August 28th, 2003 was just a regular day for this pizzeria where Brian worked at. So his boss is there being like, hey, Holiday Tomo here, yeah, how can I help? How many pizzas do you want? Okay, cool. You want them delivered to this random ass spot? They're like, yeah, it's just like a building construction, you know, we're just like super hungry. You know, send Brian as always, right? So he does. And Brian just ends up being the person delivering these pizzas. And well, he was sent to this completely empty area. So it was just empty, rough area, but nobody thought nothing of it. At that point, it wasn't like Uber Eats now, where it's like, yeah, we can't deliver to schools, we need like an actual pinpoint house or whatever. So nobody really thinks nothing of it. That is until Brian doesn't return to pizzeria, and the next thing you know, he is on the news. Because at 2:30 he has entered this PNC bank just off Peach Street in Erie, Pennsylvania. And his appearance is quite striking. He's carrying a bomb that's set up as a collar around his neck. I'm gonna put the pictures up. It's kind of like one huge handcuff around his neck. It's holding this square bomb, and he's wearing a Guess t-shirt. So, I mean, even without that bomb it would be striking, but clearly people are freaking out, like what is under his shirt. So he goes to the tellers and he says he needs $250,000 and he needs it in 15 minutes. And they're like, well, we actually can't give you this amount of money. Like, there's no way that we can take out in this amount of time 250 from the safes. So they put something around $8,700 in the bags, and he leaves the bank. Now, what should probably strike you first as a true crime freak in these stories is if there's a robbery, always pay attention to the amount of money they're requesting. Because if it is something specific, it's usually for a specific reason. Sometimes it's humane and it's like somebody saving someone's life and they need to pay for a surgery that costs $250,000. And sometimes it's a lot more morbid. This kind of immediately struck me because I was like, why not round it up? Why not make it 300,000? Why not make it less? Why not make it $1 million? Why exactly that amount? Sometimes it is even more specific than this. Anyways, cool, proceed with the story. So he leaves the bank. Immediately the police is called and a chase ensues. Okay, this should have been this disclaimer at the beginning of this video, but if you're googling this now, stop. Just trust that I can put enough images in this. I haven't seen this video, but there should be a video of this online, so just don't look this up. Finally, they reach this empty area and Brian leaves the car, but they have realized that there's a bomb on him. And they only called the bomb squad about 30 minutes after the initial police call is made. Which again is super questionable. They might, probably not, but might have been able to maybe even save Brian. So the police officers are now distancing themselves, barricading themselves behind these cars. And Brian is like screaming out to them, basically. They're just interrogating him, trying to figure out what is going on from the distance, so that they're safe. And he said a dark-skinned man has actually put the collar onto his neck and has shut it in, and that apparently triggered a timer. So he is scared that the bomb is going to explode because it's operated by one of those remote cell phones, so somebody can just click on a button and it will explode. He's basically saying like he needs to complete this, otherwise nobody is going to defuse the bomb and it's going to explode. And it kind of just in those minutes you hear the beeps and the bomb blows up and Brian has been left dead on the spot. So the bomb squad didn't make it in time. This tells you a couple of things. One, the specific amount of money. Second thing, the time. The time just doesn't, the time seems to be constrained and he doesn't seem to have enough time to complete any part of this mission. Third, why has he driven into this particular area? That's going to become prevalent as well. But fourth, again, is how and at what point did they know, whoever is behind this bomb, to blow this bomb up? Did they see it on the news? That's the one part that I think is left unanswered. Did they see it on the news? Did they just put these time constraints and they were like, well, we can't risk it? Because I think it speaks to the premeditation of the person. Right? Like, it's different if they have just seen it on the news and deciding the spur of the moment, like, yeah, we can't have him share this plan, share these secrets. Or have they actually been a lot more calculated and have given him, like, timestamps? And if he doesn't deliver to these unrealistic timestamps in the first place, then this is when you're going to be blown up. So, the aftermath of this bombing. Now the police is obviously investigating this and has been processing this car as a crime scene. And they have found a note. So Brian Wells has been left a note with detailed instructions, the summary of this plan. So his first task has been the bank robbery. And then by completion of each and every task, he was to gain more time for the next one. So I can only describe this in a way as some people do proposals. And they're like, well, this is, you go here and then you go there and you go there, you get extra time. And then, you know, it's like some great surprise in the end, except this is the morbid version of that. And again, this included puzzles, it included different keys in different areas. So the police again now looks into this area where Brian has led them to. And they find like a pot that again had like a note attached to it and had like a key to like the next location. But by the point that they had made it to that next location, all of the tracks, like that note, everything that should have been at that first location has been eliminated. So somebody has caught up with them and has eliminated the thread leading to whoever this money should have ended up with in the end. This particular note in Brian's car was also hella dramatic. It said, "This powerful booby-trap bomb can be removed only by following our instructions. Act now, think later, or you will die." So just a sideline there. Now if you're thinking about what I said before, I mean, I think like this has obviously been pre-planned, but I also think that this mastermind thing has come into play from that news footage, because unfortunately journalists and like everybody broadcasting this obviously alerted the perpetrators and people who have set this plan up in the first place that hey, now they need to go to secondary locations and eliminate the trails that they have left behind. Now the police is investigating, looking further into Brian Wells, like why has he perpetrated this, who is he as a person. So they go and investigate his house and they find this list that, as I mentioned, Brian was kind of simple, so he kept the list of people he associated himself with. And by that I mean he also had this sex worker's name on the list that he would see frequently. Her name is Jessica Hoopsick, and the police kind of connected her to, well, her pimp, Kenneth Barnes, and because he was kind of like a big fish, he owned a crack house, and that was kind of like a known place where he would be like pimping out these sex workers and was just involved in this shady business in town. Now this doesn't pan out yet. Kind of like as this is developing and as they're investigating this, they receive another significant phone call. This phone call was made to 911 by Bill Rothstein. Who is Bill Rothstein? There's like a lot of characters in this place. Well, first of all, we need to get to that call. So Bill Rothstein is there. Here, 911. So I'm using this spoon for everything but eating this jello. Hey, 911, hello, yes. If you go to the address 8645 Peach Street, remember Peach Street? He didn't say that, but I remember that famous address from a couple of weeks ago. So this was 20th of September. And Billy's there like, hey, yes, so if you go to that address and you open up a freezer, you're gonna find body in the freezer. And they're like, thanks, sir, can you just hold on the line? And they go and arrest his ass. Now, as they're interrogating Bill Rothstein, he says, oh yeah, I mean, I don't like speaking much, but hey, I even wanted to commit suicide over this. So there's like a suicide note at my home. They're like, okay, so they're just, you know, peeing the police officers at this location. They're like, hey, suicide note, have you seen it? What does it say? What does it say? And the police officer at the other location is there like, hey, yeah, the note says this has nothing to do with Brian Wells' case. Which is exactly something that somebody who has everything to do with Brian Wells' case would say, right? Right, cool. So the police is now there being like, okay, hey Bill, yeah, how about you actually start spilling the beans and saying like what is going on? Yeah, we have read the note, lovely note, great stuff. So he's like, hear me out. It's totally not me. I just have this ex-girlfriend. Her name is Marj, yeah. So Marjorie Diehl-Armstrong, she just called me one day and she was like, hey, so I kind of killed my current live-in boyfriend, James Roden, and I need you to take care of it. And so I did. Because I'm a great character, I help all my ex-girlfriends out like that. Yeah, so Marjorie has threatened him and has asked him to dispose of his body. But to dispose of it in such a way that there's no evidence, no murder weapon, because obviously she shot him again because she's aggressive. She doesn't care about her mental health again. She's hoarding her life away. He melted down the murder weapon and he kept James Roden in the freezer. And it was only out of sheer fear because Marjorie didn't want to freeze her body. No, she wanted him to grind up this James Roden character and that for nothing ever to be able to connect to her. However, he called the police because he feared what Marjorie was going to do to him now. Because that's what happens when you get a call to get rid of the body. You are the next body in line. She was killed previously, okay? Okay. Okay, this next part, I imagine like that 70s show, but like morbid version, okay? So, remember Barnes, the guy that came up once they were looking for Wells that is associated with the crack house? Him, Rothstein, Bill Rothstein, and Marj. So, you know, just imagine them sitting in a circle and plotting. And apparently Marjorie is the mastermind, the other two are just like, God willing. So, okay, this might get a bit bizarre, might get a bit complicated. Marjorie had a plan to kill her dad, but for Barnes to kill her dad, she had to get enough money from this bank to pay him up, right? So she promised him 200,000. So Marjorie is there like, hey, listen Barnes, yeah? I'll plan this thing, I'll find a patsy, the two of you just prep this bomb, okay, cool. This bomb, yeah, who's gonna do it? I don't care, I'm the mastermind. And Barnes is like, I okay, what else? Whatever you say, 200,000 looks nice, yeah. Would you need me to do much? I don't question anything. Obviously, it's like, the bomb is gonna be the bomb. Marjorie is like, yeah, but like, for reals. This is the dumbest conversation I have ever had, even in my head. Marjorie's like, okay, cool. So my plan is to kill my father and then to inherit all of his multi-millions, because apparently Harold Diehl had multi-millions. And the kicker was that she was never in his will, so all of this happened in vain. So she was arrested the day after Rothstein called the police, and she got 20 years in prison. She was convicted in 2005, but around that time as well, Rothstein died of lymphoma, so he died of cancer. And Barnes also spoke up and got 45 years extra to his already prison sentence, because he was already serving time. I think her sentence was shorter than his because of her mental health issues. The sun has shone upon all of us except on Marjorie Diehl-Armstrong's appeal, because she has obviously appealed the sentence. Because if you have been listening, you're like, how has one person gotten more years than the apparent mastermind of all of this? Yeah, I was wondering the same. Her lawyers have actually brought this case to the court again, because they have said the first time when they have sentenced her, they didn't actually take into consideration all of her like mental health issues. And then she demanded for this trial to be like in a different county, because she was like, well, look at these news coverage I'm getting, like clearly people are biased, the jury is going to be biased here. And the judge was like, okay, it's actually pretty objective considering the circumstances, being that you blew up a person on live television, you psycho, so no, it's going to be here. Erie, Pennsylvania, is it called Erie or Erie? Yeah, correct me in the comments, but yeah, Erie, Pennsylvania, this is where you're going to get served. Now, what proceeds is the best paragraph I have read. I was like, okay, true colors be showing, Marjorie. I need to read this out to you. I'm a good, decent person. I've got the equivalent of 5 college degrees, and I have a master's degree. I'm a certified teacher. I'm a music teacher. This is reading like an Instagram bio so far. I'm a social science teacher. I worked at those jobs. I worked with the state. I have a degree in sociology. I'm not a bank robber. I don't have to rob banks to get money. I'm a certified guidance counselor. I almost have a doctorate. Almost. just in the nick of time. Just there. Just about to do it. But then I had to kill my husband. Last dissertation. I'm certified to counsel elementary and secondary schools. I'm not crazed. I'm not a crazy person. That's exactly something a crazy, mad person would say. True colors. That's what I love. She's been showing some true colors, this Marj girl. Now this trial in general was just a bad mistake, because she was on a witness stand. She attacked everybody. Like when Barnes would offer his testimony because he tried to cut a deal for even maybe less time, well, she would call him a liar, like she would scream. The judge had to cut her off like 50 times. And when she was on stand, she would argue with her own lawyer. It was a freaking nightmare. She would say like, that's a stupid question, lawyer. Like, I'm trying to help you out, you miserable human. And more importantly, she never mentioned Brian Wells. Well, she did like in about last 10 minutes. And she would be on the stand for like 5+ hours. Just imagine listening to this woman for 5+ hours a day for like 2 days. You're like, God, just kill me now. So she says she never knew Brian Wells. She did not conspire with Brian Wells. Like she's not aware of who that person is. You know, just trying to distance herself from the situation. And the prosecution was actually making a good point here. And they had made the point that she didn't do this for money. She wanted to be seen as the mastermind, as somebody who can plot this away and get away with it. And well, once you hear her speak for like 10 hours for the 2 days, I feel it's easy to convince the jury of what they have been seeing is correct and is it true colors of Marjorie Diehl-Armstrong. So in February 2011, she finally got a life in prison for the bank robbery, conspiring to commit a bank robbery, using a destructive device in a crime. Now, her prison interviews, again, are just special. She said she's not Casper the Friendly Ghost. She said if she was in a bank, you would have seen her. If she was the conspirator, like she would have made herself known, because that's the kind of person that she is. Which again, I mean, you're technically all over it. You're technically over it, so yes, that is the kind of person that you are, and it's very visible also. Now we come to this gem. We need to dive into this. So she has been transferred to like hospice care because they discover she has cancer, and like then the cancer kept progressing, and because she was just refusing chemotherapy and just refused to eat in general, and then was just eating jello in her last days. It's slimy and I hate it. I do not like it. I just don't look at it. It moves around your mouth. Describe jello for the audience. Ah man, this is not the same person. The person who eats this after all the food. I know that you lose your appetite, okay? I've had people in my family die of cancer. I know you don't have the appetite, but this is the only thing you have the appetite for. And it's not even like heartily, it's like some freaking hospital jello. Okay, for people of you who like jello, please drop in the comments why. Why? It's just sweet, you need water. It moves in your mouth. So in the end, actually, she wasn't responding to like any, look at it, jiggles. In the end, she wasn't responding to like any questions. I'm trying to become serious again. Like, she was breathing normally, but she just wasn't there. So they pronounced her dead on April the 4th, 2017. And fittingly, the drama in Marjorie's life didn't stop there. No, she was buried in this like cemetery, Cedar Hill Cemetery Park, that wasn't like too far from the hospital. But after her death, there was a guy. Okay, so you know how people like these have fans in prison because just people are delusional. They start pen paling with prison inmates and they're like, oh my god, I love you, and they're totally like, yeah, I love you too. So there's been this guy that thought he was her husband, okay? So he has requested her body to be moved close to like his house cemetery thing so that he can come and visit her often there. We both know what he wanted to do with that cemetery, we both know. And okay, this special case, I'm not explaining this right, this special case lives in New York, right? So he submitted this habeas corpus thing, which judge has rejected because he said habeas corpus only applies to people who weren't alive, so no, we cannot move her dead body. Also, you're technically not really married, some like informal marriage, just like by exchanging letters, like you haven't actually married this woman also. Stop it, sir. And journalists took hold of this, and when people started interviewing him, be like, well, did you actually go to Texas where she has been buried in this Cedar Hill Cemetery to like commemorate her? He's like, no, I go to the place where she should be in New York, and that's where I commemorate her. So that's a love story for you. Like, but her body is somewhere else. What can I tell you? Does this make sense? She ate the jello. Like, what did you want? Did you want this to end happily? Did you want this to have happily ever after? I mean, she's dead, so kind of did. Well, wow, what a story. Like, you know what you thought? Why do you think Marjorie did it? Do you think like she was actually the co-conspirator? Do you think it was all her idea and she deserved the life sentence that she got? Or do you think that people put her under the bus? Because that's a theory out there as well, that maybe, you know, there just weren't enough links to this. Although, I mean, she should have still probably deserved life sentence because, like, she killed like 2 of her husbands, if we remember that part. But yeah, jello, huh? I'm gonna give this to somebody else. What should I eat next? Drop down in the comments below. What should I eat next? What should I talk about next week? Give me a case. Give me something. Give me substance. Give me a case where I don't risk seeing somebody being blown up on television. Okay, that would be such a great one. Yeah. Until then, keep appreciating your next meal, especially if it's not jello, especially as if it was your last. Until next one, bye. True colors, that's why I love. Give me a way.